We'll call this meeting to order. Commissioner Lenore, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Chair Henderson,
Here.
Commissioner Corona,
Here.
Commissioner Lenore,
Present.
and for the record, Commissioner Belong and Commissioner Huboy have notified us a couple days ago that they would not be able to attend today. Verification of agenda posting was Friday, May 5th, 2023 at 3:50 p.m.
Okay, we have no minutes to approve, so we'll move on to public input. This is a time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the secretary before speaking. When the secretary calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the City Planning Commission. If you are joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we have no public hearings, no new business, no old business. And we'll move on to study session items. Item 1, zoning ordinance overhaul, ZOA 2023-3. Staff report.
Thank you. This item will be myself presenting, and we do have Erica Fraser online as backup, but she's not feeling well, so I appreciate her being here. This item tonight is a zoning amendment 2023-3 regarding planned developments. As the Planning Commission might recall, at the February 9th and March 9th, 2023 study sessions, we talked about planned development, and the direction that we received was to have a conditional use permit not be the appropriate requesting application for a planned development, and that a rezone would be a better way to approve these requests. That the city should allow for flexibility in the allowed uses through a plan development, which is not currently part of our plan development zoning code section. That we should allow plan developments within both residential and commercial areas and industrial areas as well, whereas right now it is only allowed in residential zoning districts. And ultimately, the planned development PZ overlay could be removed from the zoning ordinance in favor of a direct planned development reference for each project, so that on the zoning map itself, it better references the approved planned development for that area, so that staff as well as the public can better find their documentation that governs their zoning area. And that would be done at a later phase, but that is the ultimate goal, is to do a rezone and remove PZ in favor of a direct reference. And then no other changes to the zoning ordinance are necessary as part of this plan development modifications section. Tonight we've drafted the ordinance for your consideration and seeking any last input before we bring it forward to you for formal hearing and recommendation to the council. So as written, who can apply would be any project over 1 acre in size for the total project area. They could also apply for plan development as a pre-zone, so to annex into the future into a plan development proposal zone. And it would be allowed on all properties regardless of the general plan land use designation. Oops. What did I just do? One section that you'll notice in the draft ordinance is 17.40070 regarding a substantial benefit. And as the plan development would be a discretionary approval ultimately by the city council, one of the items that would be required to request these modifications to the standard zoning requirements would be that the project is providing some sort of substantial benefit to the city as part of this. And there's some examples identified in the ordinance. This could be increased open space or dedications of land or otherwise community features, art that is unique or interesting, providing public benefits. So that would be a discretionary decision, but it would be that they're providing something in exchange for getting this unique zoning benefit. Some of the deviations that they would be able to request as part of their plan development zoning would be height, deviations from minimum lot size and lot area per dwelling, changes to setbacks and lot width, depth, and frontage, open space modifications, lot coverage or floor area ratio modifications, a request for different dwelling unit types in a residential or mixed-use zone, where they might only be able to do single-family detached. They might, as part of a plan development, be asked for being able to do some sort of apartment or a duplex, triplex, fourplex, so they'd be able to make that request. Shared parking, or not necessarily a parking reduction, but maybe you put parking in one area of the site of the plan development and everyone from the plan development is able to park there, as opposed to parking each area as the code requires. And then we've also put in a provision that they could request another deviation that could be deemed appropriate by the Planning Commission and the City Council in case we haven't thought of everything that they might request. As far as land uses that are allowed for plan developments, they could include any of the following. So all of the uses established for the underlying zoning district. So for example, if their underlying zoning district was a general commercial, anything that would be allowed there, retail or any of our other general commercial, those would all be allowed. And then they could also request uses that aren't listed in the zoning ordinance that are compatible with their general plan. And then they could have accessory uses, or they could have, again, multifamily structures and single family residential. And one thing to note that's important with the plan development, they would have to be consistent with the general plan density for their entire project site, but they could spread that density across their plan development. So that would be one thing. So if they had, say, 10 acres and they were allowed to do a maximum of 20 units an acre, so that's 200 units, they wouldn't have to spread that density around, but maybe they push it all to one side and they're proposing maybe a commercial component, maybe a larger park, something like that, where they might be higher density at one side, but they're overall consistent with the general plan density for their total acreages.
Does it also allow them to kind of fulfill their substantial, what was it again, amenity?
A substantial benefit.
Benefit.
Perhaps, maybe they're providing.
Like in the open space area?
Yeah,
If
maybe
they
they're
cluster
providing
them like that.
maybe they're
Okay.
providing the benefit somewhere
Okay.
else, or somehow else. It could be affordable. It's subject to discretion when
Okay.
we're ultimately reviewing the proposal. Some of the prohibitions would be that they cannot lower or request to increase the required density. It would need to be consistent with the general plan density ranges. Otherwise, they would need to do a general plan amendment in order to change those densities allowed in the general plan. We are recommending that mixed-use zones not be allowed to eliminate a commercial component requirement, as that would not meet the intent of the mixed use in the general plan. We are recommending that the properties in the downtown mixed use be limited on the availability to do plan development, as ultimately the downtown is kind of a special area, and part of the general plan update proposal is to consider a specific plan for that area. So any of the requirements in downtown we want to follow the downtown kind of plan and general plan guidance, as opposed to allowing individual sites to have this kind of established unique zone. We are recommending a prohibition of allowing single family residential in the medium and high density residential land uses. to try and keep those into those medium and higher density or higher density product types for housing, and to reduce or remove the requirements of any adopted design guidelines or standards. So for any specific zone, if they had some design standards or objective design standards that the city adopted now or in the future, we would recommend that they comply with those, again, unless there was some specific substantial benefit to not complying with it. And then the reduction or removal of any design or preservation requirements for historic. So making sure that we're complying with our historic districts that are on the National Register and not eliminating their contributions to the National Register designation. The submittal requirements would be an application, a site plan, a conceptual land use plan, their density information and a narrative of their project, any design guidelines that they're proposing for their site that could be included. They could have a recommendation for, you know, specific landscaping or open space or other as part of their kind of plan development request. Any phasing information, as well as parking information for all of their proposed uses on the site. So what we're looking for in this ordinance, and it's laid out, would be that the Planning Commission and Council are really seeing the project that they're approving at this site and giving a special zoning designation too, because they can see the whole project as laid out. Plan developments will be established through a rezone of the project area as discussed, and it would be to a plan development zoning with their direct numbering. And then all plan developments would have a referenced underlying zoning district. So if we don't have a specific regulation for something in the plan development, we would fall back to that underlying zoning district and the regulations there, so that nothing is identified in the code, if that makes sense. So everything has a reference. So if they didn't specify it in their plan development, we fall back to the zoning that's in our code for standard zoning requirements. And then the zoning map will be amended as part of this approval process. Staff would follow our kind of standard completeness review and review the application proposal for compliance with our plan development chapter. And then this would be adopted by ordinance. So we would draft an ordinance to bring to the Planning Commission for review. And Planning Commission will review as you do now with a public hearing, and we'll make a recommendation to the City Council. So that would be the slight difference here because it is a rezone and an ordinance. And then ultimately this process would be adopted by the City Council at a first and then second reading of an ordinance. We've also written in information about if the applicant or a future developer, or maybe it's a home owner or something in the future, wants to make some adjustments, minor adjustments or clarification to the plan development, that there would be kind of a tiered level of approval with some discretion for minor things at the Development Services Director level, as well as if it's a little bit bigger of a minor modification request, we're recommending as part of this ordinance that there'd be a distinguish for a minor modification to a plan development permit. And then all amendments that change the provisions, the intent, change the substantial benefit, change the development potential, or the land use map would require approval by the City Council. So a significant change would have to go back through the council. And that's kind of the end of the presentation. The next steps, we would incorporate any of your suggestions from the draft ordinance that we've provided to you into the ordinance. We'd incorporate those changes, and then we would bring it forward at another council meeting for a public hearing and recommendation to the council. We're proposing to remove this section from the overall phase 2 that we've talked about, as there's some projects that we're working on or projects that might be in the pipeline in the near future that would benefit from this chapter, especially with the the recommendation that it be allowed to benefit commercial and industrial projects as well. So we're recommending bringing this forward separately to the council outside of the overall phase 2. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and Erica's online as well if it's real technical. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions about the staff report before we have a public comment?
I have a question. If you could just clarify for me, I didn't quite get under the plan development established, section 17.40030, second page there. This middle, the establishment and of underlying zoning district for the site. This allows plan development to fall back on the regulations of the zoning district. I get that. Where the plan development is silent. What's that mean?
Yes. So, for example, if in the use tables, let's say, let's come up with an example. So maybe someone wants to apply for a plan development in a residential zone. Let's say it's underlying zoning, if they were not doing plan development, would be medium density. And what they'd like to do with their plan development is allow a grocery store. That's their use, and that's not currently allowed in the R3. So their plan development would say that a grocery store use is permitted, and that would be part of their plan development zoning. But as far as the other regulations, they didn't have anything else. So what we would look to is, okay, in the R3, we'd look at our regular zoning table, and it says, apartments are allowed, duplexes are allowed. So they're not making any other modified use. Does that help?
Well, but you're talking about having a commercial business on a residential zone?
That would be the plan development, right? That's
Right.
not currently allowed, so they would need to be
But then
rezoned.
that's just like a free-for-all. It doesn't even comply with the current zoning. Oh, do you rezone it to?
You're rezoning it to plan development, but then if they don't talk about any of the uses, Erica, go
If
ahead.
some is commercial and some is residential,
So, excuse me,
specify that?
if I can try to add,
Okay.
this is Erica. If I can try to add, the reason for the underlying zoning district is, there's two reasons. One is sometimes not everything is specified, like Eva was saying, for example, if they just specified, we're gonna do some residential uses and we're gonna have this, this commercial component, they might choose to not establish anything else, and we would fall back on the code for parking and setbacks and landscape requirements, things of that nature. Another reason for doing it is you might have a case where the plan development is very specific and lists out the uses that they want to have. But as we know, over time, the kind of uses that you see in a city start to change. There are new uses that come up all the time. We'll have this discussion in a couple minutes about that. And so they might say, we permit these uses, but any other uses in this zoning district, right? And so 20 years from then, rather than having to amend the use table, we can go back and use that current list of uses to see if there's anything else permitted at that time that someone's asking. That would be consistent. And then just as kind of a catch-all, we want to fall back on an underlying zoning district because we don't want to make a plan development applicant reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So there are parking standards in our zoning ordinance. They fall back on those parking standards. There are landscape requirements for parking lots or a percentage of landscaping. If they don't want to establish something new, they don't have to write it again. They can just fall back on those requirements. So wherever the plan development is silent, we can then use the zoning ordinance. It's really intended to make them not to have to write an entire zoning ordinance for their project. They're just tailoring some site-specific things for themselves.
And if I can add just from personal experience in dealing with older, kind of more, it's almost like a plan development zoning that did not have a correlation with an underlying zoning designation. They were special developments. They were called zero setback, totally different product that this city had. Well, somebody wanted to add fences to their front yards, and that special zoning district was completely silent. Their whole plan was silent on fences. So without having a reference to the underlying zoning district, which should have been single family, the planners had to sort of make it up because everything was silent. Really, we couldn't approve, or we couldn't figure out whether to approve or deny somebody to have a little fence in their front yard.
Well, but we have a fencing ordinance.
And that's what it would, well, I was just saying fences, but
Right.
but fences in this case were very specific based on your zoning district. And
Wow.
so say if the underlying zoning district is R3, and there's special, requirements in R3 for fencing, and the plan development doesn't specify what happens with fencing because that's not really
And
the
it
whole
falls back to
goal, it would fall back to
To the
R3.
original zoning.
Correct.
To the underlying zoning.
And it's really nice to have that catch-all, especially 20 years from now
Yeah.
when weren't here to adopt it,
Yeah.
to remember, oh, that was the intention.
It's just that, I was just a little startled to see that you might consider commercial retail inside of a, but to me, it falls in the line of mixed use. So it's not like we don't do that, but Yeah,
That
that's
was
ki-
just an example
Yeah.
of,
Like,
but that would
well-
be up to the discretion, of course, of the planning commission.
That's a whole new different set of mitigation measures when you're doing commercial versus residential, kinda.
There are situations that I can see something like this happening. You have a very large residential area
Yeah.
that, for walkability, for example, somebody wants to establish a little corner store
Yeah.
on
Neighborhood
their
commercial.
planned development, a little neighborhood
Yeah.
commercial that their underlying zoning district would not necessarily
Okay.
allow, but there's a huge public benefit to that
Oh, sure.
because people can then go walk down to the corner store instead of getting in their car and driving over to
So,
Safeway.
so what we're doing is kind of individually putting them in projects when before we could just rezone that property to neighborhood commercial and somebody would put in neighborhood commercial use.
And the difference there is a rezone to a neighborhood. I'll need attorney's help with this. Having that base use, so a neighborhood commercial, so say if you have all R1 and somebody wants to do a
Right.
neighborhood grocery store.
Right.
Rezoning that to a mixed-use site is considered spot zoning.
Now, neighborhood commercial.
Or neighborhood commercial, whatever,
Yes.
whatever
Not- yeah.
something that does
That's
not.
not spot zoning though, because neighborhood commercial doesn't necessarily abut an existing commercial.
If it doesn't abut, so if you're making an
Yeah,
island.
making a, yeah,
And that's where having these special developments comes in.
okay, well,
Yeah,
maybe it makes more sense that way.
right.
Cause I know, I never really thought spot zoning is pertaining to a neighborhood commercial, lot
It
in an area of residential.
I'm not sure I have anything to add.
Well, it's okay, I don't wanna get too
Okay.
far off, that's
Because
Yeah.
fine.
sounded correct.
She
Yeah.
answered the silent part for me. She answered it, the silent, that was my question. What's the name of the agreement that goes to the council? A performance overlay agreement? What's the name of the agreement that goes to the council as a result of performance overlay? 'Cause I'm
The
drawing a
current,
blank.
the current code has written in there that a performance agreement would be
So
established.
let me see if I got this straight and I'm gonna wrap it up. I was a little concerned about losing the say-so on tentative map because I'm just used to having it. And I didn't want tentative maps to become political. This has great potential to do so. I always liked it in the planning area, but let me get this straight. That agreement, that performance agreement ended up having, if you had a PD and if you had an overlay, I'll get it right. If you have an overlay performance thing, the agreement would still have to go to the city council to get approved for that tentative map. That's PD.
That's how the code is written, yes.
That's how it is now.
Yes.
So now so it's the same thing. I guess that instead of them getting a performance agreement, they're going to get the rezone as part of the PD.
Yeah, that's the recommendation.
I guess in the other thing, it stated, let me get to the end here, about the process. So it's kind of give and take. It said, let's see, let me find it. I should have highlighted. No, okay. Increase it. Just a second, don't mean to hold you out. And clarify provisions and make minor, okay. Line commission by means of a plan and may approve minor amendments. Well, I'm not sure where I'm trying to see. Maybe it'll come to me as we continue the discussion. So that's all my questions for now. I'm sorry, I didn't want to get off into comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Okay, we'll see if there's public comment at 6:26. Any speakers?
I have no speaker cards and I have no hands raised in the virtual audience.
Okay, thanks. We'll close the public comment at 6:26. So, do we have any suggestions to any suggested changes for the draft?
I have a question on the draft ordinance, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Accessory uses. I think I got that one figured out. That would be like if they put an R1 and an R3 and made the R1 an accessory use, correct? No, because it does talk about that. So what's an accessory use? That is, would otherwise not be permitted by the underlying zoning district.
This goes to the fact that they might be requesting a use that isn't allowed, so they would want to identify if they had an accessory use that was requested as part of the uses that they were requesting to be allowed in their plan development. For example, the neighborhood corner store might need, maybe it's not a neighborhood commercial store, but maybe it's a little like animal food store or something. And sometimes they have like little storage areas for hay or whatever. I don't exactly know. And so that would be an accessory use to a use that they're requesting as part of their plan development.
Yeah, usually if you think about like an accessory dwelling unit or an accessory structure, it's something that is sub to the main
No, I
use.
get all that,
Yeah.
but I swear to God, I read in here where one of the uses that could be allowed would be accessory. So where else did it talk about accessory uses?
I'm seeing it in 1740-040 for
Yeah.
land uses.
Yeah, right. Okay, 1740-040. Where's it at?
C.
C.
The following uses are permitted. This
Okay.
is page.
The conceptual land
Two.
use plan.
It's also an ADD.
So we're looking at 040090. Tell me the whole number.
04 or 17.40.040 C,
Yeah, I got that.
and
But
then
where else?
it looks like OAOD is what you had said.
080D.
That's right.
080. I know I read something, and I never read that before. 080. Wait, say it again. 17 what?
17.40.080 prohibited within a plan development. D.
Okay. D.
Yes. So
okay,
this
so
is
see what it's
oh,
saying there? So
Yeah.
what is that?
So this is saying that if the underlying zoning is medium or high density residential or underlying mixed use zone, that the plan development cannot be used to modify the allowed dwelling unit types to allow single family residences unless the commission and the council determine that they can be an accessory use, so long as we talked about earlier, the density. So imagine, let's say we have a large mixed use site in town, and that's the underlying zoning, and it's supposed to be mixed use, and our current mixed use doesn't allow single family. But what they want to do in their PD is they want to focus a lot of the density up to one corner and preserve a single family buffer, because maybe they're neighboring single family houses. So maybe their plan development is to kind of shift the density. So instead of doing 25 units an acre that's relatively evenly spread out across their site, they want to shift and do kind of a 40 unit an acre area here and maybe a few single families. So overall their density is still consistent, and that would be up to the planning commission and council to determine if that's appropriate for
That's
the
like
plan
an
development.
accessory use? Okay, never. That's new for me. Okay, thank you. Actually, Chairman, I don't think I had any other questions on the actual draft ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any suggestions for changes to the draft. I'm excited about this going forward, and I'm curious and interested to see what kind of projects come as a result of this. So
You're gonna have a lot of power. Yeah, no, you. Well, in my history with the city, I don't believe the planning director or development services director ever had that much leeway. But it is the sign of the times because it's all about streamlining. So you really could make a case that obviously, hopefully this does do a little bit of streamlining, simplifying it. And I do understand, Chairman, I do understand that that will enable staff to track all these individual plan developments with different criteria and different triggers maybe, and better so that, and then they'll see it on the zoning map. So, I mean, that's gotta be a useful tool. So I hope that's what gets them there to be as organized and transparent for the community as to what's going on in that property when they do come looking, they're buying a house and they want to know what that is, then it will be a better, clearer picture. A little more sooner than it is now. It's called planning. Thank you.
Commissioner
I'm done.
Lenore, now that you brought that up, also in my experience, any ambiguous terms I always love to have defined. And that, I may be conservative in what I think a minor adjustment is to something. I may have other people that think other things
Yeah.
are minor adjustments. So that might be something that we can bring back and look at. So what constitutes a
You might
minor
want to do
adjustment?
that.
Because of, is it, we just don't want to take the time to take it to planning commission, so this huge thing happens, and God forbid that happens, but I've seen it happen
You could probably
before.
clarify some.
So having a
there.
clarification, I think that's a good, because really it is called a clarification. Somebody doesn't quite understand how it was approved, that does give the director the authority, I guess, to make an interpretation of it. But I think that's something we'll talk about when we come back to you on what that minor adjustment looks
Well, we
like.
kind of address it a little bit in the minor CUP and the major CUP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Because a minor amendment, major
Yeah.
amendment, those end up being even more at the discretion of the planning commission.
Thank you. That's all for me.
okay, any further discussion on item 1? Okay, thank you. We will move on to item 2, zoning ordinance overhaul. Staff report.
Okay, yes, thank you. So this item is a new item for the Planning Commission for study session. This item is pertaining to conditional use permits, as well as the underlying use tables for our residential, commercial, and industrial zones. Tonight's discussion is to, assist staff in preparation of a new conditional use permit chapter as part of our zoning overhaul that we've been discussing. In the past, the Planning Commission, we talked about site and architectural and design review and kind of where we want to go towards that. And this is the kind of next discussion of permit types, which is where do we require a use permit? So conditional use permits, just to have everyone on the same page here, is that a use which is identified by a city that could be compatible with the surrounding area after the city is allowed to review the operation of the proposed use and can put conditions of approval upon that use. A conditional use permit can be revoked if necessary, so that's an important distinction. It's not a permitted by right. You place, or the city places, conditions of approval or consideration of the operation, and if they are not operating in compliance with those conditions of approval, then we can revoke a conditional use permit because at that point it might not be compatible with the surrounding area. The city currently reviews conditional uses by the means of a conditional use permit, which is reviewed by the Planning Commission, and we also review conditional uses by an administrative permit review, which is at the director level after a DRC, Development Review Committee, review of the proposed use. We've talked a little bit about administrative permit review in the design, site, and architectural discussions that we've had with the Planning Commission. It's a little bit of a vague permit as it covers both site design and architectural design at this staff level, director level review, but it also talks about uses, and we place conditions of approval upon administrative permit reviews as well. So staff is recommending that this permit type be removed in favor of a tiered design review that we talked about, which is the major S&A, minor, and possibly an administrative level, kind of really fast over the counter type of a permit. And then we're also recommending a major and minor conditional use permit instead of this administrative permit review. That's a little bit vague. So this minor conditional use permit will operate essentially the same as the admin permit review now, but it is intended for uses that the city has identified as having potential for minor impacts on surrounding businesses or residents. It would allow the city to require modifications to the projects or conditions to mitigate impacts. It would be reviewed, again, similar to the APR admin permit review that we do now. What we are proposing is that once our review is complete, we would send a 300-foot notice to property owners within the proposed use permit approval area and allow an opportunity for property owners to comment upon the proposed approval or denial, I suppose, of a use permit at the admin level before the director makes a decision. And that notice would include the date that the director intends to make a decision on the project so that they can provide us comments for the director's consideration before the approval is done. A conditional use permit, again, is intended for uses the city has identified as having the potential to create significant impacts on surrounding businesses or residents, and we're not proposing any changes to how they're currently processed. They would still come before the Planning Commission with recommended conditions of approval and ultimately for the Planning Commission's decision. So as we're going through and reviewing this chapter and the whole zoning ordinance phase 2, we've reviewed the permitted and conditionally permitted use tables in our code, and they need to be modified both to reflect the new permit types that we're proposing as part of the overhaul, but also modified to include some new uses that have come up in the, 15 years since the code was adopted in 2008. And some new uses required by the state law and uses that we've seen come up in planning that just aren't really clear in our code. We're also recommending that the use tables identify not whether a project requires design review, but whether it requires a use permit of some level. Design review, as previously discussed, it could be required on a project. It could not be required on a project. So a project could require both a use permit and a design review, possibly just design review, or possibly a use permit. They're kind of different things, and whether or not a project requires design review isn't necessarily appropriate for the use tables. We're not anticipating major modifications to the other use types in our other smaller zoning districts, so we're kind of hoping to get some direction and feedback from the Planning Commission tonight on the use tables for residential, commercial, and industrial, and then we'll take that into the use tables for our other zonings like the airport zoning district, the open space, parks, and institutional public facilities zoning districts. So we'll have all of the use tables for you at the ultimate adoption of the full zoning overhaul phase 2 section. And we'll review that in the future. So we have in your staff report a big use table with our proposed modifications to the permitted and conditionally permitted use tables for all of our zoning districts in commercial, residential, and industrial. And tonight, we just kind of wanted to go over this table proposed with you guys and see if you had any comments, questions, or concerns. Our new uses that we're proposing are located in blue colored cells in this table. Changes are shown in red with crossouts and new review types shown in the red text. And then existing uses that are in the table that don't have a definition or don't have a clear definition in our code are shown in yellow. And all of the new uses in blue will need a definition as well. We're not quite at definitions, but between myself and Erica, we're happy to discuss if anything was confusing, what we were thinking for that use. But ultimately, we would bring all the definitions that we're proposing before the Planning Commission as well at a future study session. So I believe that that's really all for the presentation, but our next steps after this is to incorporate your direction and continue through the zoning overhaul phase 2, all of our uses and all of our permit sections, and bring that back to you guys in the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions and kind of go through this table with you.
And just for clarification for the public that's watching, and is when you look at the abbreviations, P is permitted, NP is not permitted. The MCUP is the minor conditional use permit, CUP is the use permit, and it appears so. And then the cross out of the S&A is that's the site and architectural that isn't appropriate in a use table, and then the appropriate
Level
either-
of use permit required is
correct
is
is in red.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that maybe put a legend off to the side on each page so that it's very clear. So any questions for staff about the report, the staff report?
Yes, one question on the staff report for
Go
me.
ahead. Go ahead.
Under the permitted and conditional permitted uses on page 3, the last sentence down there where it says some existing uses in the use tables, for example, antique and collectible shops, will be deleted and I guess and incorporated within a more appropriate use category for brevity. So is not an antique and collectible shop, is that a thrift store? Maybe not, but is that not a commercial retail business?
That's exactly our thought, Commissioner Lenore, is that would fall under commercial retail, general retail. So go ahead, Erica.
So our code as written right now is very specific in some ways in the use table and unspecific in others. And what we'd like to do is kind of maintain the same level of specificity. There are categories that are all encompassing, such as professional office, and then that includes things like, an accountant, and an attorney, an engineer. But then in some cases, we also then have professional office and then would split out different types of offices. The use table is getting very long. So what we're trying to do is take out some of those things that are already covered under another category. The antique and collectibles is really covered under a commercial retail use, and the definition will be much more clear in that case. But what you're talking about, a secondhand store, that is not like a Goodwill type donation store, is not currently on the list, either existing nor proposed as separated out. I do know that other cities require conditional use permits for them. So if that's something you wanted to add in, we could add that in separately.
Okay.
And some of the reasons I've seen other communities for resale shops do that is especially if they have donation areas. Goodwill tends to have a donation area. What I think that as we kind of move through the times and be more inclusionary, we're always cautioning that we're not, excluding businesses just because of a public perception of them. But if there are ways that these places operate, that it looks like, hey, we probably should have a condition on this. If they have a donation drop-off or large trucks that are coming, we need to look at the circulation a little bit more, and put condition on those above and beyond our site and architectural that we'll need to do. That's something that we should take into consideration as well.
I mean, some uses have issues and others don't. Well, that's my only question on the report.
Okay, we'll open for public comment at 6:46. Any speakers?
I have no speaker cards. Give me 1 second. And no hands raised.
Thank you. We'll close the public comment at 6:46. So staff, you wanted to kind of go through the list? Was that the intention?
Yes, I'm happy to go through it line by line, or however you guys think we'd like to do it. If you already have any questions on any particular lines, happy to take them, whatever you think is the best way.
For me personally, I already have my questions and concerns ready to go. I don't need to hear about every line item on the thing.
Let's go with what you've got then.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
please.
I'm not gonna try not to take too long. And as far as the duplex, triplex, did not state law kind of intervene there as far as permitted, non-permitted?
So you are allowed to do a duplex via SB9 in an R1 zone, our single family zone. What we're proposing right now, based on the definitions, is to not permit the duplex in the R1 under the duplex line, because that's where we're looking at multifamily and we're typically looking at a design review level of some kind. And we're proposing to add a line that you'll see kind of midway on the first page of the table for an SB9 unit,
Right.
and put where that's permitted. So it is allowed, but it's allowed under SB9, which is a different process. And so we thought that that might be the most clear.
All right, so you're gonna address it on the SB9 line.
Yes, so we're putting SB9 as its own line to show
Yeah.
that the RE and the R1 are our two single-family zoning districts where you might be able to apply for an SB9 permit.
Okay.
And there are some different types of units that are allowed there.
So that's how that's gonna work. Dropping down to mobile home / manufactured home park. I don't wish to see them in any gateways, North Gateway or West Gateway. I don't know that a manufactured home is really supposed to be considered the same as a conventional single-family dwelling because it's on a permanent foundation. A mobile home is a different animal. So I don't know that you can mix both of those. Really should be mobile home park and a manufactured home because they're not one and the same.
This
home.
line is intended to be a mobile home park / a manufactured home park. So it is. It is a park.
Excuse me. All right.
But
Not an individual unit.
yes, but I believe that
So
we might be required to allow such a park in any residential area. But I would defer.
Okay, but we don't have to allow it in West Gateway. Now let me say this. If we're here tonight to do what I think, in my opinion, is better for the city, then we should consider that. Because then I'm just hearing, oh, we can't stop them. We can't do that. We can't do this. Well, I'm saying I don't want a mobile home park in the West Gateway or the North Gateway.
I mean, Eva is right. There is state law that requires the city to allow those types of dwellings in certain zoning areas. I'm not familiar with what North Gateway and West Gateway allow. So
And they have special plans actually as well. The
And
West
currently,
Gateway.
as proposed, they're not permitted.
Okay.
So if you look
So what-
over under West Gateway, not permitted, North Gateway,
No,
not
it says
permitted.
CUP.
It says CUP.
It says CUP.
We can look in, Commissioner Lenore, to
Where
see
am I?
where we're required to allow them. And
Yeah.
if we aren't required to
Please.
allow them in
Please.
West Gateway and North Gateway, we can definitely
I was
Okay.
bring back a table with that not permitted.
I'll accept that.
Sorry about that. I was looking at
Okay.
the wrong line. Because there's
Um,
two. There's two lines. There's manufactured home, mobile home, and
Yeah.
there's also mobile home, manufactured home park.
Oh, right up there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the two. So we'll probably need to look
Oh,
at
so
those.
manufactured home, mobile home. Oh, let me just. Oh, so there. Oh, yeah. Then that looks good. because they're permitted in the residential, but they're not permitted in the commercial areas or out in industrial. Okay. All right. I answer maybe this question for me. What is a single room occupancy unit? Just going down a little bit more. What is that?
Erica, go ahead. I see your hands raised.
Okay.
Single room occupancies are an older type of housing that we didn't see for many years. It is a very small unit, more studio in nature, but they are very small in a development. We're seeing more and more because they are considered affordable housing. While I don't believe we have any in Hollister right now, we could have the potential, and there is state law regarding these.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious what they were more than where they were going.
And I think I've also seen SROs, or the single room occupancy, in much older developments where you would have this much smaller units that may have shared facilities, like shared bathrooms and things like that. They're not a hotel, but
Yeah.
Isn't
They're a
it
hostel.
similar to kind of a dorm?
yeah,
Kind
Like
of
a
style-
hostel? Okay.
like a hostel too.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So you have your private room, but you might have a shared kitchen
Yeah, that's what
facility. Yeah.
I come from the land of thousand trails, and they had hostels. And that was the weirdest thing ever, but luckily there was nobody else there, because I thought it was kind of weird. But that's, it's California in me.
Erica,
Okay,
did
I'm
you
going
have
to drop
anything
down
else?
now. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Animal grooming. So we're going to drop down to animal grooming. And I wasn't sure why we weren't going to allow them in the downtown mixed use, in our downtown area. It says not permitted. We had a pet shop there. I loved it. A lot of people love that downtown.
There-
Oh, wait, that's grooming. Excuse me, I'm on grooming, animal grooming. So we're going to not permit it in downtown? That's the grooming.
I
There's-
believe
There's one there.
I
Yeah.
believe that
Then
this
look right down below.
is how
there's-
our current code says, but we
Yeah.
can look to change.
Yeah, and then the one I was started off was animal retail sales. That's going to be not permitted in the downtown. That's your pet store, correct?
Go ahead, Erica. I was just going to say, if it doesn't have a red line, I believe that that's just transferred from our current code. But we
So
can definitely
we're
look to
not
change.
proposing to change any of that. The only reason I would ask for hesitation on a retail sale or a grooming is because they can tend to be loud. And you have to think about, is that an appropriate area for loud barking if it's a dog grooming?
Okay,
But
maybe
that being
dog
said,
grooming. I'll give
we
you-
can change it. We're changing the use table now. If you want to change that
That's
too.
what yeah, I can understand animal grooming, but not the retail sales part. I would like that permitted in downtown.
Okay, I'll make a note and
That's
then.
just my opinion. I'm
You
putting
get
it
it.
out there for the other two members here.
So Commissioner Lenore, let's think about those two just a little bit and see if, do we want to have them principally permitted, which means no conditions can be put onto them? Would you want to have it as a minor conditional use permit that would be
Okay.
or a full-blown conditional use permit that the planning commission would take a
I would
look
like a minor conditional use permit on the grooming aspect for downtown. I'm just requesting, maybe that, but on the retail sales, no, permitted use for animal retail sales. We had a pet shop. It was successful. It was a draw. It was a draw. People have animals, and animal stores draw a lot of people. And people have even more animals now because of COVID. They were in there, they got animals, and it just seems like it's a retail use. So that's my request. You don't have to do it. I'm just saying that's what I think it should be permitted. But
Commissioner
the
Lenore?
grooming maybe should have conditions for noise and such.
Can I ask for a point
Yeah.
of clarification? Because
Sure.
I am familiar with the animal pet shop that we used to have
Yeah.
downtown. So in terms of retail consideration, like back in the day when they would sell reptiles or fish, you're just saying outright permitted? There's nothing in terms of adding conditions for the care of the animals. That's the only thing that really comes to mind.
They're governed under some state thing, right? Don't they have states overseeing the people that run pet stores to make sure they're humanely running it? I don't
I'm
know.
not sure. I am
I
not
mean,
familiar with.
We've had
Pet
pet
shops.
stores our whole life.
I know that different things have come up when it talks about sales of, dogs and cats. I've heard things, but
But
I
that
don't
could
know
be
that
in any
I've seen a
zone.
licensing.
Yeah, we could also
That
always,
issue could be in any zone. And
Right.
they have new regulations. Can't sell dogs and cats anymore in the pet stores in California. Yeah. Oh, you can adopt, but you can't sell them. So that's just something I thought was unusual to exclude from the downtown, the animal retail sales. Okay. All right.
So what about
What?
an existing business? I mean, I know there's
Well,
a-
it'll be legal non-conforming when they change it.
okay.
Right. Yeah. So for any existing use in a zone, if there's a proposed change or if they're currently there and as the code already exists and
Okay.
they require a use permit, they're considered legal non-conforming and fall under our
So see,
non-conforming codes. So
How did
they're
that
fine.
one even get in there? I remember when it went in the alley there. So if it was not permitted, I don't know how it got there.
It could have been before the
It
zoning
wasn't
table.
before 2008. We're already in 23. Okay.
Don't ask me hard questions, Commissioner
Stuff
Lenore.
happened. I seen it all too. Building material store. Building material store. I really don't like it in the downtown. It's not a compatible use. Building materials. You see, we have one in the middle of town. I bite my tongue all the time because it's been a useful store for the community. But in fact, it really is out of place now. But being it's our only one other than Ace Hardware, I looked the other way. So happy they did some concrete to cut down the dust, give us some mitigation there. But I think that we should be careful with building materials store because just downtown, because obviously we would love to get a Home Depot. But you're not gonna have, I wondered, is it an appropriate use in the downtown core?
So I have a question for you, Commissioner Lenore. If you look on the next page, so building materials store, and then we have also right above automotive uses as wholesaler or contractor supply store. We're going to be working on definitions
Yeah.
and looking at define these. When I look at like a building materials store, some of the things I think about is sometimes your little hometown hardware store that maybe is more of a retail type of use. I'm not
But
sure
those
how it's
aren't building
defined.
materials.
Right.
It's more like Hayward it's more like, McKinnon lumber.
Is there a definition currently in our code on of building materials?
That I would defer to Erica. It's not highlighted in yellow, but that doesn't mean that we have a clear definition necessarily. I would personally think that the building materials store would be more of an interior use. We do have
Okay.
some outdoor. So on the other table, we have both the contractor supply store that Director Hopper referenced, but also a few lines above that, we have retail sales for outdoor storage and or display, and that we are proposing as not permitted in the
got
downtown.
that.
Right.
So the definition needs to be improved in the zoning ordinance. So even though some of these are not highlighted in yellow, there is a definition. Most of them I have notes where we need a tweak here and there. My intention of fixing this building materials is that in the downtown, it's gonna be all interior. So you could have an Ace Hardware that sells some wood inside or some bricks or whatever they might want to sell. But then the second thing that comes into play with the one that you're talking about is then outdoor storage for retail sales is a whole nother use. So if you wanted to do both, you have to find a zone where they could both appropriately be located.
And not the downtown.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned with downtown. I understand it as a
Yeah.
commercial use. I understand it as maybe even a gateway use. But in the core of downtown, I didn't really like that. Well, the chances are that's gonna happen is probably slim, so.
Well, that's why, and the
reality-
definitions we'll talk about, if you have
Okay.
outdoor activity, that's totally different.
Yeah.
And right now, it's not currently being permitted in the downtown for
Right.
that outdoor use that can cause some
Except that we did allow a CUP for some outdoor use there on the old KFC lot. When Marcy was there, we did a conditional use permit for that. Okay, so I just didn't want a big lumber thing,
If it were
a lumber yard outside.
sure, but if it
Okay.
were indoor,
All right.
would you still
Of
be?
course, I would love that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So then I'm thinking about discount stores. As we said, thrift, discount. Look, I have absolutely nothing against them other than they might saturate one area. So in particular, the West Gateway. We already have a new Dollar General. We have a couple of Quick Stops, which aren't discount stores. They're fueling as well, which is very important. We have the ability. Do we have the ability to restrict the number of thrift and discount stores in an area? Or can you only do that with a West Gateway plan or a North Gateway plan, where you have the special zoning district? So if you have maybe a special zoning district, you might be able to say, hey, one or two of those. Because I know there's a concern coming in the west and on the west side that they don't want to get stuck with all the dollar stores. All right, there's a concern there. So now they have one. It's a good one too. I like it. But I think we should be sensitive to where we allow discount, secondhand, thrift stores. But maybe we can't.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we're discussing, and I don't know of any particular law that would disallow the city from.
Because we're a
Well,
public agency.
I'm really not
Because
sure.
you know, in the new building over here in the 400 block, they're saying no. Because it's a private thing. They're telling they have a restriction on thrift stores and secondhand store in their building.
So you're concerned that there would be too many in
Yeah,
one place?
That's
or?
correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. Maybe the market dictates that.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
So maybe the market
but-
dictates that, but we just want to make sure we get them evenly in the city and not in one area.
Yeah, I'll have
of
to
that.
look into that for
Alright.
you. You're right, they might self-regulate in that they don't, but they also
Well,
might
yeah.
group together because people want to shop in those types of stores
Yeah.
all at the same time.
Well, we had an uproar when we tried to have that one over there, and they did not want it.
So are you talking about like large retail, like the Dollar
At
General?
the Dollar General.
Or small thrift stores, or both?
Both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think I'll have to, I don't know off the top of my head.
They're popular, okay?
Yeah.
They're very
Oh, yeah.
popular. But we don't want too many of them in one spot. We want to keep some of our vacant land in the West Gateway, for example, open for other different types of uses,
Yeah.
which I'm sure we have a good idea of what we'd like, so we're getting closer anyway. So it's just a concern that I didn't want a concentrated area of discount and thrift stores.
Is that the only type of use you wouldn't want to see concentrated? Or are there other uses?
No,
Okay. Oh, it's not the only type?
no, it is the only,
Oh, okay.
only. I mean, I know it's commercial. They do sales tax now. So it is a sales tax generating business,
Yeah.
the thrift stores. But I think I'm maybe not talking so much thrift stores, I am discount. Discount. And you do have the ability to limit the number through your West Gateway plan, I think. I could be wrong.
Well, we don't
Okay.
have a West Gateway plan, but we could definitely look into having it as a.
We only have an improvement plan, huh, for West Gateway?
Yeah, there's a beautification plan
Okay,
for the
all right.
roadway. We could look
All
into
right.
having that as a separated, defined use in the table, and we can look
Yeah.
into whether or not there are any restrictions on restrictions, if you will, and then we could come back with that information and
All
talk
right.
about that as a line.
I mean,
and
I'm
where,
not trying to be a hard line, but I think there was a concern in the area over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm remembering that.
yeah, I've heard
Okay.
of. I don't know for this particular use, but for
Yeah.
other things like a 7-Eleven type of a kind of consignment type store,
Okay.
where zoning ordinances might have a buffer, so they're permitted, but they might have a buffer between
Okay.
how often. So we can look into that
All
and
right,
see
cool.
what we can do and what we can provide.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to food and beverage sales. I didn't quite get why they wouldn't be allowed in light industrial M1 and industrial business park. We're already allowing the restaurants to locate in, at least I know the light industrial, a la Corbin out there. So is that something different? Food and beverage sales outside of the ancillary use of a restaurant for an established industrial use?
I believe that this, let me find food and beverage.
It says it's not permitted.
Yeah, not permitted. So, we do have it, the ancillary use, as you mentioned, that's allowed, in the industrial, but we're not proposing any changes. We could consider changes
Yeah,
if the
well,
commission
because
would
we're
like
already
to.
allowing a restaurant. in the
I
current-
think those would fall under the ancillary deli or cafe, but, I'm not aware that they have a conditional use permit. I don't know. So,
Well, how did Corbin do that out there? I
I have no idea. I found out
Okay,
that
never
that
mind.
restaurant existed last week when
He
Christy
did
told
it
me she
legally.
went
He
there.
did it
so
legally, so I know it's legal.
I don't know.
Okay. You're like, I don't know. You were here.
But so would the commission like to consider having
Yes.
restaurants as
Well,
an
me. That's my
allowed
opinion.
use in the industrial?
Or conditionally
Well,
allowed.
well, it
So
saves
food
on
and
them having to
beverage-
run into town for stuff, so that's less driving.
Go ahead, Erica.
So the food and beverage store is really, and it's yellow, it needs a better definition, and it's in the code now.
Right.
So we believe that it means I sell food and beverages as a grocery store or a convenience market, which is separate from the restaurant use, which is its own use.
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
And
Okay,
then
that is-
within the industrial district, you can have an ancillary deli,
Yes.
restaurant, whatever you want to call it, and that's permitted.
Then maybe
This
change
is-
it to food and beverage stores.
We can
Because
do
you're
that.
saying sales. And to me, I didn't see store. I saw small food and beverage sales.
We can change that. It's in the existing code. I just left it.
Okay.
Because I hadn't gotten to the definition yet.
Okay.
Some of these words might have to change to make sense with the definition too.
Okay. Okay. Health and fitness clubs. Do we want to continue to allow them in the light industrial zones? Then it's got to not be a CUP. Right? Not permitted. That's a big question.
It is a big question, but
Do you
it's
wanna
definitely one we
continue?
can ask.
We have a concern always too that we're letting the non-industrial uses such as gyms and churches into the industrial zones and parks. Is that smart to continue that or not? I find that it does come with some incompatibility, such as the cannabis business over there, which I consider an industrial use on not the retail side, more compatible than the gym that was fighting to not let the marijuana in because they said it wasn't appropriate. Well, what's not appropriate is the gym over there in the industrial zone. They have a CUP, they went the right route, but do we want to continue that? Is that a zoning that you guys want fitness clubs in, or do you want to keep it in the commercial areas, the downtown, the North Gateway? It's there, but do you want to continue allowing them to go into those last two, M1 and IBP? So that's something you guys could think about. For me, no. It's not compatible with an industrial use. It just isn't. It's really more a professional service or a commercial. If they got a commercial component in there, which most of them do, it just seems more compatible with commercial than industrial. All right. No
So,
problem.
one thing,
Go ahead.
also, this is kind of similar to the
Yeah.
comment before, but for a legend, you could also, the top column with all those different zones, if you could
Right.
just have a legend for that. And could you remind me what M1 and IBP is?
Yes, M1 is our light industrial zoning district. Why it's called M1, couldn't tell you. Manufacturing light, maybe. So that's just our regular industrial zoning district. And then IBP is industrial business park.
What happened to our M2 zoning, by the way? Did that go away?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was before, but in
Yeah,
the
it was.
2008 amendment, there is no M2 or no heavy industrial.
Wow. Okay, and then I'm getting to the second page now, and there's not as many. I wanted to know why on page 2 there are there's a recycling facilities, and then down lower there's recycling facilities commercial. What is the difference in those two?
So our code separates out recycling facilities currently in the definitions in several different ways. So this reflects the existing definitions plus the way the code is laid out now. We did get stumped for a while, I have to admit, when we were working on this, on recycling facilities. So if you wanted us to streamline it a different way, we could. I'm open to any suggestions that you have. It really just comes from our existing code and how it laid it out. And like I said, we kind of got stumped, so we didn't know how to change it in a sense, but I'm open to any and all suggestions.
Well, I certainly understand recycling facilities, but just didn't, that's why I was asking clarification on what's recycling facilities dash commercial. We don't know, it's just the way it is right now. I don't know.
I think that there's a possibility, and again, yeah, as Erica stated, the definitions are very clear, and I think there were even more lines of recycling facilities in our
Okay.
existing tables. But one thing we could do with definitions and potentially with a better name for each is kind of distinguish
Yeah.
between, you know, the drop off your cans and maybe get a dime back, or drop off. I know
I do it, so,
No.
and I live by one.
And then there's also, so I'm aware of that type of facility. I've
Okay.
seen, there's one where my family lives that is a kind of drive up and you dump over a wall your
Okay.
big recycles or your regular recycles. And so that's kind of a middle tier type of facility that I can think of. And then I can also think of even a larger type of industrial level recycling facility where they're maybe actually doing crushing or.
Well, they do that at all of them,
Yeah, so I'm not sure
and I live by one.
if the commission has any suggestions
Okay, so I do.
on where and what types.
Yeah. Recycling facilities, in my opinion, do not belong in North Gateway, downtown mixed use, or neighborhood. Certainly should never be a neighborhood mixed use. It doesn't belong in West Gateway. They do belong in industrial and industrial business park. All of those other ones, CUP, no, not permitted. And I'll tell you why. They are loud, they are dirty, and it is, sorry. I see it every day. I hear it every day, crushing bottles, wafting through, over the condos, into it's just not a good use when people are trying to live. So we got one, it's there. I've said for years the city should have worked with that one and the one on 4th Street to relocate them because they're just not appropriate now. They're both in the middle of downtown. So don't want to keep compounding that by having recycling centers anywhere where they can be seen. They are ugly. I don't care what you do to them. And they're always got the stuff piled over the fence when they're not supposed to. They're not monitored enough. So in that case, if they're not going to be monitored adequately, then I don't want to see them, because they can be done. But in this town, they don't do them right. And the one out, look, got the other one out there. I don't say anything because I don't have to see it. It's back there doing its thing, Rodriguez back there. That's where it's supposed to be, in the industrial zone, in the county, but not anything commercial. I mean, how could you ever justify a recycling center in neighborhood mixed use? I mean, no. Or your core of downtown. Those are my comments. I'll just move on.
So just to,
Okay.
I just went back and looked at the definition again, and the way the existing definitions are written, that's why it appears that way, but the definitions aren't very good, and I see what you're saying. So as part of this whole thing is we establish these kind of uses, and as we go back and think of definitions, I think we'll have more clarity within this code, and then
Okay.
just based on what you're saying and me reading that definition again, recycling definitely needs to get changed to address what you're talking about, because I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then just make it
Thank
more
you.
clear.
Thank you.
So I'll make sure that's included.
Okay, thank you. Vehicle repair and service is another one that I always have to kind of be concerned with. It just depends again if it's inside. Okay. Outside piles of tires? No. So I don't think we should allow anything outside in the vehicle repairs and storage once again in our West Gateway. We don't want to see a bunch of cars needing repair and tires outside. I love San Benito Tire. I do a lot of business there, but I can't stand the tires that are stacked in the back. They do a good job about clearing them out, but not good enough for me not to like them. So I want to avoid these things. I don't want to keep having those kinds of issues. So I think we should not allow vehicle repair and service in the West Gateway. Maybe you have to, but I don't mind it again. I don't mind them in the industrial business park. We got a few out there. I think they're really located well in industrial business park. They're over there on Industrial Drive. I think that's great. I think we have to watch where we put those because of the outside aspect, as in the tire shop that moved next to me a few years back that I fought, and you guys remember, and they say, oh, it's going to be okay. Well, it's not. They have tires. It's gross. And it's right across from the gross recycling center. Okay, getting off topic. Commercial, you're getting it all because this is what I want to start looking better. If I don't say these things, they don't change. Okay, I lived here a long time. Stuff doesn't look good, and I want it to improve. This is why I do this. Commercial kitchen, again, the state law is calling for commercial kitchens now to be allowed for those home uses, correct? So then maybe look at that again, where you're having it's no permitted, not permitted. The individual.
What we were intending with the commercial
yeah.
commercial kitchen is kind of a large scale.
Okay.
That is the use. It is a commercial kitchen, and what we were recommending is permitted in our industrial zones. We have, our
Okay.
homeless shelter, the food kitchen.
All right.
Those uses are out in that area now, and that's what we were
You-
intending with commercial kitchen. I think you might be talking
you think
about
we need
the
to
micro
talk about
kitchen.
the end of the commercial kitchens that are now allowed in
The
a
micro
single family?
kitchen?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
called a cottage. They
Okay.
have special licensing that they
Yes.
do.
And we don't have any concerns.
No.
The state's looking at it and they
Yeah,
got it under
yeah.
control. Okay.
Yeah, there's state
Okie
license.
dokie.
I actually will provide a point of clarification. So there are two different things. There's cottage foods, which
Yes.
is allowed, and that has it's not cooking necessarily. And then there's another thing in state law about micro kitchens, and we
Yes.
did have a line. Erica did add a line, and I said, maybe take it out because we don't have any regulations right now, so
Okay.
it's not
Right.
required to be permitted by the city, but we can adopt an ordinance to allow it. And my suggestion to Erica when I said take it out was that we could have that as a further discussion in the future, so we
Okay.
can talk about regulating it as well if we do want to permit it.
Okay. And I think, folks, one last one. I didn't know what public utilities and public service facilities are. Is that city stuff? Is that us?
Yes,
Is that us?
It's city services.
Okay. The yard and the PD building and.
But it's also
okay.
PG&E facilities.
Oh, okay,
It's-
public, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you've got a substation, you've got,
All right.
it's anything that you can think of that would be
a
a
public
public
use.
utility.
All right,
yeah.
and I am done. Hope you got all that.
Thank you very much.
Maybe some will be helpful. Maybe some are nitpicky, but just keep in mind, I just want a better looking town. It looks good, by the way. I just want to keep working at it. Thank you, Chairman.
Sure. I was wondering, you mentioned the auto businesses, the tire businesses. So there's a couple out, West Gateway area. So you had an issue with those?
The ones on 4th Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not good, but they're legal non-conforming. You can't touch them.
Mhm.
Just don't want any more that are
Anymore,
gonna
okay.
have the potential to look like those two.
So,
Yeah,
and
sorry.
I drive by those every day and I look at them and that's always been, they
Yeah.
always irritate me.
Well,
So the benefit of, there are some that operate well.
Yes.
I've seen some that they operate inside, they stay inside of
San
their
Benito Tire
garages.
does a great job.
Some of them do a good job. Some of them, you watch them spill out onto the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
There's inoperable vehicles, there's tires everywhere and things like that. And that's
And they're
something
in the
that
city parking lot.
they're all over the place. And this tends to happen. The benefit of the conditional use permit is you have conditions. The city can actually, with code enforcement, can go and say, you are in violation of your conditional use permit, clean it up, or we can revoke your use permit.
Or you don't allow it.
Or you don't allow it. But we would have
Save the
to
headache.
make sure that we've got, because it is important that we have vehicle repair and service.
It is.
And making sure that we've got them spread kind of more evenly throughout the city. So we'll think about that one too. Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
it just ends up being a code enforcement.
And they've
issue.
never done it for me, so. Mike Chambliss did it for me, but no. You have to be strong to do code enforcement. I could do it. So I don't care who you are. People think, well, you're a native. I don't care. It's the use. It's only the use for me. Okay.
I just want to just kind of spot check a couple things.
Yes,
Um,
I'd
the-
like to go through it after, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, was that Erica?
No,
Oh,
I think it was me.
was you?
I think so.
You said you wanted to go through it?
I just want to make sure that we understand the direction once everybody's told us their comments.
Oh, okay, got it. Let's see, so let's go to bars and nightclubs. So you have a one in red there, so can you just explain that change?
Yes, so that change is that it is currently an admin permit review in the downtown, and so we're just proposing to keep it at that kind of staff level review at the minor conditional use permit. But if the planning commission feels that it should be a higher level of review, we definitely can change that. My thinking in why it's currently at the staff level is because the downtown mixed use, that seems like the kind of zone where you would concentrate a bar and nightclub. That's the kind of entertainment district area. So my guess would be that they intended to have a slightly less
Oh, I got one
restrictive requirement, but still having staff an opportunity to review the proposal and put any conditions that are needed, but not have to come through this full public hearing process.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I missed one.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's an important one for me. It's really an important one. Religious assembly. Currently, they're not allowed in downtown. They are not allowed in downtown. When we did the Wells Fargo, that was the last one. And then the one on Main Street where the coffee place went, they wanted to do it. And that's when the city said, no more churches. Is that a religious assembly? Before I get too worked up. They said no more churches in the downtown commercial mixed use or downtown mixed use. That's current.
Right, and so what we really need to do is look at it calling it, it's an assembly use, right? So,
The city has a rule right now, and it must have been legal or they wouldn't have been able to do it, and I want to see that continued on. You have too many churches downtown. No, that's again, we're getting too concentrated, and you got churches and bars. And churches usually take a larger building that could be used for retail sales. It's just not anything that I want to see in a downtown that really should be a mixed use. That is not a mixed use, by the way. So you cannot just put a church downtown mixed use.
So if you allow other types of assembly, so yeah, like a theater or some other type of use that's similar, where a bunch of people go, they sit, they're relatively calm, just assemble for some purpose. You do have to allow churches as well.
Then how do we have a law on the books right now? For
It's
the
old.
city?
It's old. It's out of date.
I'm telling you right now, if you take that off, you're gonna be sorry.
Yeah.
We had an issue. It's a serious issue, and you're gonna see it again.
So
And how many empty buildings do we have downtown that they're gonna go after?
And I think that this is something to talk about. I mean, right now it says religious assembly, okay? So it probably should read assembly, because there are laws and they continue to change. There's RLUIPA, but it's also, it's hard to define. We have to look at how they operate. And so if we're going to do restrictions on, say we have large versus small assembly, we can do restrictions, conditional use permits and things like that, which would ultimately regulate all types of assembly uses, which typically you see as a religious assembly or
But where are they
theaters.
parking?
Well, and that's why right now across the board, these are as permitted, and those are the discussions we need to have. Is that something that we want to look at as permitted, or does the city want to have some sort of regulation on assembly uses? And if we
Of
call
course, at the very minimum. You better set some standards, or you're gonna see what happens before you guys got here.
okay,
It'll
so
happen again.
all right, so we've noted
Okay.
that's something that needs to be talked about.
Yep. We didn't have any opposition, by the way, when we did that, because the downtown people were already exasperated with it.
Yeah, and I didn't explain, and maybe it's obvious, but it is a constitutional
I
issue.
understand.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah.
Then it'll have to be mitigated, and if they can't meet the mitigations, then no.
Right. That's why I was saying we can look at how the operations happen, because with assembly uses, people come to those all at once and they leave all at once. So that's where you've got the parking and everything. You don't have a trickle in.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the time where you see those impacts. And I know that there are other concerns that cities have, especially with larger buildings, especially when downtowns are not doing so well, is
Exactly.
you have assembly groups that will come in and they're only open one day a week.
Exactly.
So and so it has that appearance. So that is a concern. But if things are regulated as a conditional use permit, then we look at that as an assembly use, and whether or not it's appropriate in these different areas.
Maybe some kind of a measurement, so many feet. They do that with the bars, I believe.
Yeah. And banks.
Massage parlors.
So
You have to
financial
have
institutions.
1,000 feet or whatever it
Yeah.
is, because I mean, you could. We'll see how it goes. I just know what happened before and why the city had to do that, because they were after already a couple more buildings when they already took over Wells Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I love churches, love the church, but I like downtown and I'd like to see it retail when at all possible.
There was a discussion, I know, that when we were doing Monterey's downtown plan, on banks, because financial institutions are only open Monday through Friday, usually, sometimes on Saturday during the day, and then it kind of dies at night. So when you have a lot of those types of uses that have large buildings, and then there's no activity in the evenings or on the weekends, that concern comes
Yeah.
in. So those are great things to think about, especially when we're thinking about our downtown
Well,
area.
I lived down there my whole life, so I really love it, and I have a lot of comments on it, and just want it to thrive.
What we'll do is we'll take a look at all of our list of uses and see if any might fall into some sort of assembly category, and then maybe look at consolidating those into assembly.
Like I said, I have no problem with them in residential areas. They fall under, are they permitted or conditional use? Yeah. So I don't mind it, just not in a retail area. That's all I'm saying.
Right now, religious assembly
Yeah.
is listed permitted across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see what could occur there. But like you said, if you have a review on them, then maybe there'll be issues that they won't be able to make it work. Okay. Didn't mean to Shanghai you. That was the one big one, and then I didn't even mention it. So thank you for letting me do that.
Sure. Commissioner Corona, did you have one you wanted to go over? Okay.
No, because I already sucked all the wind out of the room.
You punched them all out.
Ah, sorry, it's what I do.
So, let's see. Can we?
I'll let you go first next time. I was.
So can we spot check? I'm sorry.
Go
Can we
ahead,
spot check the medical services? The red for those.
Yeah, so we currently have in our code medical services and doctor's offices and things, and they're required to have an administrative permit review. I've done a few in my time here for some new doctor's offices, and that's based on all the planners that we're working with who worked in a lot of other cities. That's kind of unusual. So staff's recommending down zone or down, not zoning, but taking down the level of use permit required to just allow those types of uses. But if the planning commission feels that we should continue to review and potentially put conditions of approval, we can modify that. But that was why we had marked those as a potential change.
Okay, so the going down to a P is less restrictive?
Yes, P would be just permitted.
It's
so
permitted.
yeah, you wouldn't. It doesn't require a conditional use permit of any kind, whether at the staff level or at the planning commission level.
Okay.
They have a retail component, correct? What? No, medical services.
Medical
that's not
services, so
supply.
that'd be your doctor's office. It does not include
We're gonna do them
hospitals.
downtown. We're gonna let them go downtown.
They're currently allowed at the APR. We
yeah,
could look
yeah.
at a different, or we could potentially look at a use permit
You
there.
could almost do it in their commercial office. No. Commercial office is not permitted, so they're not permitted there.
So this is the type of thing that would benefit in the future, and I'm going to really be pushing for this on having a downtown specific plan. Because in looking at that, we can look at the uses even based on block face. For example, facing San Benito Street, maybe we want active uses on the first floor, but we want offices and that type of thing behind the buildings and on the second floor, so we have those active
Yeah.
uses. Those are the types of things that a downtown specific plan would really benefit the city. These general uses right now, we'd have to have a lot of caveats. So you can think of, well, maybe we want a medical office downtown, so somebody
Yeah.
that lives downtown
Yeah.
can just walk to their doctor. But we don't necessarily, maybe it's not something you want to take up a retail space, but at this point, it would be very difficult to regulate without having that more specific plan.
Have you had a chance, and it's old, but have you had a chance to look at the downtown strategy and plan?
I have. I have
Yeah.
the 91 and then the draft
It
2000.
was actually a really good plan, but it's old now. But I mean, it
But
has
it's
a
a
lot
start-
of information in
It's a
it.
starting point, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to find money
Yeah.
so we can
was a
do
good
this.
plan.
Yeah, there's some good things in there.
But then redevelopment went away. That's the biggest
There's still
thing.
money out there.
I'm just telling you, I loved redevelopment. Of course, I would love redevelopment because it's taking care of existing things.
Commissioner
in the old part
Lenore,
of town.
you and I can go find some money to get this
Yeah,
plan done.
I would love it because, we're so fortunate that it paid for our $6 million beautification project downtown, and it's aging now, but it still looks better. You should have seen what it was before. Well, you've probably seen all photos. It's beautiful, but, it's getting old now, so this is now again how we need redevelopment, and we don't have it, but there might be some money, right? There's that downtown program, right? Are we not a member or something, or whatever that is? I know something, we're in something.
Well, we still have to have that meeting. We've got
Yeah.
some ideas.
Okay.
There are some grants that, that are coming out that will be.
There's
we'll
like
be
a Main
looking at.
Street program too, right?
And there's not a whole lot of money with Main
Yeah.
Street, but there's housing grants that are coming down from the state through AMBAG.
Okay.
That
No
we can
AMBAG.
apply for. There's competitive and non-competitive grants.
Okay.
and we'll have to figure out what to earmark them for.
I know the Ambeg folks.
Yeah, as long as we can tie it back to it benefits and helps with housing,
Yeah, okay.
then, we could use it for our different planning areas. We talked about West Gateway. We also have the downtown plan and a lot of specific plans that really need to be developed. Take a lot of money, but we'll just get all
We
the
got a
grants
lot
we
of planners
possibly
now.
can.
In-house, out-house. Yeah, when I was
Not-
there, we
not
didn't
enough.
have people outside. We did it all. Yeah. Okay.
I do have a question that, because it was brought up when we were just talking about medical services in the commercial office, that's kind of what's there in our current commercial office zone. So is
Right.
that something the commission would like us to look at adjusting to be a permitted
Yes.
use in the
Yes.
commercial office?
Yes. For my opinion. No? Yeah.
It makes,
Unless
doesn't
there's
sound-
something unique. If there's something unique about how, like, a medical service,
Those ones there on Sunset, I believe
I
that's
mean, on
commercial
how they
office.
operate.
it's Sunny Slope and Memorial, the corner,
Yeah,
where those
and then
doctors' offices
also
are, and then
Sunset
across
and-
from the hospital
Yes.
on Sunset
Those
are
are
a
all
commercial,
commercial office.
and that's the commercial office areas. And then it is odd that
Yeah.
that's currently
Well,
not
check it
permitted.
out.
So
Yeah.
happy to make that change if the commission is fine with that change.
I wanted to confirm with the commission, we've added gun sales, and just to confirm if you guys agree with what staff has listed in terms of where they're being permitted and how they're being permitted, if we could get
What page is it?
confirmation.
And-
It's the first page.
Okay.
The lowest blue.
Okay, gun sales.
So currently they're
Oh,
just treated as general retail, and planning doesn't really have any say over them, and we forward them to our police department, who also kind of just puts them out to whatever the state regulations are. But it is something that's come up a few times in the years that I've been here and Amber's been here, and think it might be something worth
well, we
a
have
little
a new gun
bit more
store
review.
downtown, correct? We did.
It's still there.
So, and it's saying it's not permitted.
This is our
Yeah,
recommendation.
your
so,
recommendation. Right.
if the
And
commission
blue
thinks
is your
that it should
recommendation,
be,
correct? No,
blue is new, yeah.
I, you know what? For me, they're a retail use. I don't freak out about guns. Don't really use them. Don't use them at all. But it's a retail use, and it's a lot of people use them.
Yeah. And
We can't just say no.
it is somewhat interesting too. I mean,
Yeah.
some people, if you're walking downtown, I think just kind of like similar to the pet shop. I mean, I would,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
its business.
Yeah.
It's a retail business.
We can scratch the line and continue to treat them as retail if that's.
That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
I think so.
And the cops know they're there, and it's probably safer than other things. Who's gonna go in and rob a gun store? Well, I
I'm
guess
not
they
gonna
do.
let them be in the home occupation. though.
Yeah.
That's still
No,
that's
no
still not for.
occupation.
I've had that question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if if you guys agree, I don't see a problem.
Yeah. I have a question, general question. So, has the Hollister Downtown Association been consulted at all about the list that covers the DMU? Okay.
Not in specific. The only
Well, they
changes we're
probably
proposing
would
are the
like
ones
to
that
weigh
are.
in.
done.
Yeah,
sure.
I think that would be a good thing to do, is just allow an organization that cares a lot
sure.
about downtown to weigh in on these things.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be
It's a
better
good
to have
grill.
more than just the planning commission weighing in, because there could be other
Sure.
perspectives that we don't
They
have.
work
Yeah,
exclusively in downtown.
right. Yeah,
What we're tending to do now, especially, and thank you for bringing that up, is for example, for mobile food vending, we're doing an outreach meeting next on the 22nd, just to make sure we're targeting the people that are affected as much as possible. So as we go through the zoning ordinance overhaul, these more special topics such as this, and making sure we invite the Downtown Association,
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce, the people that we know are definitely going to be
EDC.
affected and EDC to take a look at these. Yeah,
I'm sure they will. We
Yeah.
just kind of got it now, and
yeah,
let them know.
right.
yeah. I was gonna say the Chamber of Commerce as well. So
Mhm.
you get the idea. Just,
Yeah.
let's get more eyes on this.
Sure.
And if there's, I don't know if there's any organization that's West Gateway that's specific West Gateway, but, okay.
Not at this time.
Yeah, okay.
My intention is that because this use table needs definitions and I need more workarounds with it, it's not appropriate to share with anyone yet. So
Okay.
that's why it's just coming to you first.
Okay,
But once we have something where someone could, I don't want to give something to someone like the Downtown Association. They're like, I don't understand. Where are you going here? I'd like to give them as much information as possible. And to do that, I need to come to you first so we can have this discussion, because if the Downtown Association is going to be upset about gun sales, but you say it's not a big deal anyways, that's like an argument we don't need to have, kind of a
except,
thing.
except
And
this.
so I will, we
Yeah,
will
whoa,
be
whoa,
doing
whoa. We
more
can't
outreach
do
for-
that, Erica. We cannot do that, Erica. This is a public
What?
document in a public meeting. We
Yeah,
cannot
so
keep it
now
from.
that so my intention is that now that we've got some more information from you, I can give them a better proposal and we'll start doing more outreach, for example, on like, once we have a draft chapter written, right?
Well,
We can have more
actually,
outreach.
Erica, this is already on the city's website because we post the agenda packet on there. So it's already there. Once you hand something to us, you can't take no time. If somebody asks me for it, I have to hand it over. But again, it's already on the website in the agenda packet. So it's a moot point. We can't withhold things from them.
I don't think Erica's saying that we're going to withhold it
No,
if
but
they
she
ask.
wants some time.
What
And-
what she's saying is we didn't directly send this very draft to them directly for their input. Now we have more input from you. We can refine it.
Well, sure, but they have every
Sure,
freedom to get
the
it.
Downtown Association and every member of the public has rights to review the documents that are posted.
Well, they probably already are. So I know they watch the city's website, and that came out and it came out on email, right, as well, the 2040.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'm not going to go out of my way to give it to people, Erica, but if they ask me, I got to hand it over.
I mean, we welcome comments on,
Yeah.
quite frankly, any project we have. I would prefer to know from the public about even an industrial building, for example, if they have comments. The more direct, like, person to person, here we go, I have a draft ordinance, I'm sending it to you maybe before, it's hard to say, but we will do a different level of outreach for more of these detailed, it affects you.
Yes.
A draft document in the city is public. They can see it. Just contracts, maybe not when we're in closed session, but anything that's out here draft is available for the public.
It's partially true. So
Okay.
if it was published in an agenda, it is a public document.
Okay.
But draft documents that staff uses for,
That's staff though, but I'm not staff. I'm a planning commissioner.
Right,
So
okay.
once it hits my hands,
that's true.
That's correct.
right.
I think what Erica's trying to explain is, of course, this is all public. Everybody
Yeah.
can see what you're looking at. It was published in the
and they'll hear the
agenda.
meeting.
The outreach that we're going to do is as we refine these, and so we don't confuse the heck out of, the general public, is, okay, we've got the planning commission's input. We understand kind of where we need to make some adjustments. And then we'll continue to do our outreach as
Sure.
we refine these.
Well, you'll have revisions to your draft.
Oh, yeah. Probably
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
I had a question. Is there an item for furniture stores?
It's a retail.
No, I
Okay.
believe that would fall into general retail.
Okay.
If we'd like to discuss furniture stores, we can.
I don't. General retail.
All right. Could you go over the red marks for the storage?
Can I ask a point of clarification before we move on? For the furniture stores, we're saying that as retail, they would still be allowed in the downtown. We're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's my opinion. You ask. I'm just answering for me.
Okay. I got what I was looking for, so, yeah, okay.
But let's clarify. Hang on.
Hmm.
It's not for downtown storage of their business, their storing furniture, which we do currently have, and that is not good. So if you don't have a cash register in there where people are coming in there purchasing stuff, it doesn't belong downtown. That belongs in somewhere else. Because that storage is not a downtown use. And we do have that going on. And we should look into that seriously. And I don't care if the landlord doesn't like it. The fact is it's not supposed to be storing furniture. It's supposed to be selling furniture. So if you'll take those comments, I'd appreciate it. Forgot
Yeah.
about those.
They are definitely received. I would consider where on the bottom line of page 2 we have warehousing, wholesale, and distribution as not permitted. So warehousing or wholesale
But you
types
see,
of
we
stores.
have it there and they're not selling out
I
of it.
do. I am very aware.
And then they tried to go in the Lad Lane building, and thank God the fire department said, they would have been there too.
Yeah. Commissioner Henderson, you had asked a question for storage. Which line?
The storage.
The
red-
storage, personal storage facilities?
Yes.
That is currently administrative permit review, and this would be your personal storage, the storage place where you go and you have a, I can't even think of words. Off of San Felipe, we have them in our
What's that
industrial-
zoning over there where
San
they're
Felipe
putting that?
storage. So in M1, so our industrial and
Okay.
IVP,
Yeah,
they are
yeah, that's
currently an administrative permit review. What we are proposing is a staff level minor conditional use permit. This is an important place to note. New construction would require a design review, and so they might trigger a higher level review. So in this case and in any case, if the conditional use permit, say something requires a conditional use permit, but maybe it only required a minor design review, that automatically elevates the whole project to the highest level of review. So if something required an administrative design and an administrative conditional use permit, that would be at staff level. But if it was an administrative conditional use permit, but a planning commission level design review, you would see the project as a whole.
Okay, so the site and architectural would come with the CUP.
Yes. So
All
what we're trying to clear up with this table is this is a use table, and what level does the use require, but it doesn't talk necessarily to the level of design review. That would depend. Maybe you're going into an existing facility. Maybe you're going into a brand new facility you're building from the ground up. And
Well, they're doing one out there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit of a fight to get it in there, but yeah. With the West Gateway special stuff.
Oh yeah, the San Felipe setback.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me, North Gateway special.
Could you explain SB9 unit?
Yes. So SB9 unit is going to be a 2-unit residential development under SB9, which is ministerial. So staff doesn't have any say besides the objective standards that are in SB9. The city council did adopt the ordinance that the planning commission saw, I believe, earlier, or actually in late 2022. I believe that one was adopted in December, adopting the new state laws for SB9. So SB9 allows a subdivision meeting certain requirements or a development of up to 4 units, depending, in a single-family zoning. So we talked a little bit earlier about duplex, duet, kind of clarification of those. Those could be permitted as part of an SB9 development, but we're distinguishing them from the multifamily duplex that we talk about, and that might require, currently it would require site and architectural review by the planning commission, but might require a minor design review depending on how that's ultimately adopted. Whereas SB9 is purely a staff level. It's kind of, if you meet the requirements, it'll be approved, state law.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I don't have any other questions about the table. So is there?
You brought up some good ones, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Is there anything else we should, any other items to discuss with this agenda item?
No.
I'd just like to go briefly through all of the feedback we've heard to make sure that we are all on the same page for the revisions that we're going to work towards. Staff is going to look into mobile home parks and the regulations required by the state and see if there's any wiggle room in restricting those in our West and North Gateway zoning districts. And we'll come back to you with that. There was a potential change for animal grooming to, instead of being not permitted in the downtown mixed use, to becoming an administrative, so a minor conditional use permit. Is that
For the grooming?
for the grooming?
Yes, that's
Is that
what
okay
I
with-
understood.
Okay. And then for animal retail sales in the downtown, changing from not permitted to a permitted use.
Do you guys like that? You have any feelings on the pet store?
It was nice having it downtown.
Yeah, it's a draw as well for the other stores.
Okay.
That's sometimes what I'm also considering. Is it gonna bring people down there to go on the other stores? What did Marty call it? Synergy. Yeah. Okay.
We did have some discussion about building material stores, and I have in my notes that we came to keeping that as a permitted use in the downtown, knowing that outdoor sales and storage of materials is a different line in our use table and is not permitted in the downtown. Is that fine, keeping that permitted if it's all interior retail type?
I agree with that.
Okay. The next note I have here is a question on health and fitness clubs, and they're currently allowed with a conditional use permit in our M1 and IBP industrial zones. And there was a question of whether we wanted to continue to allow these in our industrial zones or if we wanted to not permit them at all.
That's my preference, but you guys might think differently.
What's an alternative location then?
They have the ability to do it a minor conditional use permit in the commercial office, general commercial, North Gateway, downtown mixed use. So it's and West Gateway. So they have a lot of options, I think, without going into the industrial park and the light industrial zone.
There is one point I might make for the commission's consideration is that you might have a really large kind of gym facility, but it might fall into the recreation category anyway. So that's something to consider too. But you know, those like trampoline houses or anything like that.
That's not a health and fitness club though. So you
That's-
might have to spell that out.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, that
But we
there are
could-
some very large businesses that need a lot of space, so I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, we
to-
do have on the next page recreation indoor versus recreation outdoor. Indoor being a minor CUP in our industrial and recreation outdoor being a CUP in our industrial. So it might not preclude that from coming to the consideration of the planning commission while still putting not permitted on health and fitness clubs in the industrial. We can make those definitions clear for the planning commission to consider.
Yeah, the only other use that I would think, and you mentioned the trampoline places, but there's also the large, if we're looking gymnastics and that
Yeah.
type of thing, need the much larger.
No, they do, but that's not a health and fitness club.
Okay, so if it's not the distinction between
Yeah.
the two.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which
let's-
brings my other issue up in the industrial zone also. And I forgot this one too. Another issue I have is the churches in the industrial business park.
You
Did I bring
you
that
did,
up
you did
already?
mention it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so is that, all right, so we didn't get there. Just go ahead.
I'm curious, so let's say Ravella's, that's a huge facility.
Yeah,
I don't even know where else that could go. So,
in a commercial zone. That's where they usually go. In the big
Yeah.
cities, they're in the commercial zone. They're not out in the industrial park. San Jose, they're all in the commercial zones. That I think. Of course, I don't know that for a fact, but it seems like they're in the commercial zone. And here, they're not in the commercial zone. They're over there in our industrial parks. Why? We have one, the Gold's Gym is in, what's that over there? That's a mixed use.
yeah.
But, it seems like a commercial use more than an industrial use.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a
Industrial, okay.
CUP, I understand, it's a conditional use, but is it appropriate? Do you guys like it? I mean,
Is it gonna conflict with other industrial uses that come down the pipes? And, oh, I'm sorry, we have kids at a gym. Well,
Chairperson Henderson, just to clarify, at least what Eva and I have been told in regards to like where Ravella's is located, for example, was that the intent right now, it is listed as in one, which is the light industrial. But what we've been told by our predecessors was that zone was really thought to be kind of like a quick service area for people to have like minor things done to their cars or detailing. And then just as it kind of evolved, it is what it is now, but it was not intended to be as heavy of a use as what we're seeing, which is kind of, I'm not sure.
Gyms and heavy industrial uses is kind
Yeah.
of what's
but
on
those are
industrial.
light industrial uses on Industrial Drive.
So for
We've got
example,
some hazardous materials and things in
yeah,
there too.
one that I had brought recently was there was a karate studio right next to carpentry making. And in this case, it was originally one very large building, and the way that it was just like subdivided, it didn't go all the way up. So people were being affected by the dust that was coming through. So like some of those things are to be considered when these uses are there. There are other sections, as you guys are aware, that are more separate. But that's kind of what we come across. And the other thing that I would say that I've experienced and is really difficult for a lot of our small business owners, especially the ones that have gyms, is the parking situation that occurs, because they might go right next to an auto body, and an auto body place stores different cars on site. So when they have clients coming in, there's not as much space for them to park while they're there.
Yeah, there's a lot of parking required. The Gold's Gym is just full parking lot almost all the time. A lot of gym folks, so you know that that's an issue. Again, I just don't see them as an industrial use. For me, they're just located in an inappropriate zone.
Yeah,
That's all.
I just think we need to be a little bit careful, because it seems the market dictates in a way. I mean, if there's a space that's available and an industry use doesn't come forward and fill the void, but
You still need compatibility.
yeah,
It's just because you have an empty building is not a good excuse to put anything in there because it's empty. It's a zone, should have appropriate uses in that zone. For me, a fitness gym is not a light industrial use. It's a commercial use. It's a neighborhood commercial use. It's just not an industrial use for me, and I think we have had problems. We had fights over there versus industrial business that I think should have been there versus the one that's conditional use there. Who should take precedence? One that I think that should be there, or the conditional use? For me, it's about industrial uses first and not commercial uses. You guys can do what you want. Maybe there'll be other discussion, and we'll hear what David Juboy has to say, and
We'll
Commissioner
definitely
Ballon.
have this discussion again with
Yeah.
the use tables, so we can leave it. Should we leave it as a CUP for now with a question of further discussion?
Yeah, because maybe other people think differently than me.
that sounds
Sure.
good. Yes.
Okay, we'll leave
I
it
have no
as
problem with that.
proposed, but it's,
go with the
this is
majority.
not the adoption of the ordinance by any means, so.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm always willing to discuss stuff, and I go with the majority.
No,
And
I
even
think it's
when
a
I
good
don't
question,
like
and
it, I
it's
like
been
to
an
be
issue in the past.
cohesive. If it's something I really don't like and it's not a really giant deal, try to show support to the other commissioners that do like it. That's just how I come. So maybe we won't do that.
Just no recycling
We'll see. Well, I mean, that's a
No
no-brainer.
recycling centers.
Dirty, dirty, dirty.
Alrighty. The next note I have is just staff's going to look into any, again, restrictions on restrictions for thrift, discount, consignments type stores, and bring that information back to discuss that as a line in our table.
Yeah, and my sense is that you may restrict, but I'm just not sure. It's just not something I've seen with respect to like maybe limiting the number of a particular type of business in a particular location.
Well, now we did it with, massage parlors, of course, is a state law.
Yeah, and
But we
cannabis.
did it with
and-
the pot stores, not the
Yeah.
pot stores, the smoke shops. We're not supposed to have those two smoke shops that close together. I'm pretty sure the city adopted something regarding smoke shops, cause it was also an issue.
And this may be something that doesn't appear necessarily in the
Yeah.
use table, but rather as like a separate regulation.
Right, so we need to make sure we're doing the right thing, amending what we maybe haven't been doing right, such as churches downtown. Better figure it out, because,
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the use table hasn't been updated in a
Yeah.
long time, and so there's new laws on,
sure,
for example, tattoo parlors have to be treated the same as a hair salon.
yeah,
And
It's a
then,
service.
massage went from super restrictive to not super restrictive. And then, it just, things tend to change as laws change. So, yeah, we'll continue to have these discussions on the ones that can be, especially people feel very strongly
I mean,
about.
I don't wanna violate state rules.
The next note I have, this was kind of one of the last things you talked about, so I think it's fine, but permission for medical services in the commercial office, changing that from not permitted to permitted. Okay.
Oh, what did you say, the medical services?
Medical services, meaning doctor's offices,
Yeah.
dentist offices, permitted in commercial office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, that's where they are.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of them are. That's where we put them.
Okay, we are talking about recycling facilities. Staff's gonna look into definitions, but it sounds like CUP in only the 2 industrial uses is the recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's an industrial use.
The next line I have was with regard to vehicle repairs, and there's a question specifically in West Gateway. So it is currently allowed with a conditional use permit. Staff was recommending dropping that down to MCUP, but there's discussion about not permitting it all. So just a direction from the Planning Commission on what you guys think.
Well, I don't know if we can legally not
Uh,
permit them.
It's a mixed use zone. I think we could regulate.
Yeah,
Where those
yeah.
are?
I'm not aware
Okay.
of any reason you couldn't.
Okay. And again, inside is okay. Outside is not good.
With that being said, would you want to keep it as permitted with a certain level of use permit? We can talk staff or planning commission level, and that be part of the code? Is that in that zone they're only allowed as a fully indoor use, or do we want to not permit?
Are we talking about just downtown right now?
I'm talking about just West Gateway. That was
Oh,
where.
West Gateway, I'm sorry.
That was
thinking-
that
you
was
did
where
say-
the question is, but the
Well,
whole
yeah,
line
inside.
is up.
Come on, man, that's the gateway. We already got it bad going in down closer to town. I just think the gateway should look nice, and cars outside that are needing repair and tires and stuff is not a good look for a West Gateway. Maybe that's gonna come out more in the West Gateway beautification plan. In the meantime, we don't wanna locate any there that might conflict with the West Gate beautification plan.
Do we want to then maybe leave it as a CUP so that the planning commission can look at what their proposed operations are and make a discretionary decision upon their proposal?
I would be more comfortable with that
The
than,
CUP?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you guys think, CUP?
CUP?
It's a happy medium, but
Okay, we can leave it. We can definitely leave it as a CUP. CUP. And just to confirm, the administrative permit review, which is currently allowed for the North Gateway and the M1 Industrial District, staff's just recommending a kind of lateral transfer to a minor conditional use permit for those, in those 2 zones for vehicle repair.
okay, vehicle repair. What zones again?
That would be in North Gateway. So
Okay,
it would
yeah.
currently, the proposal would be in North Gateway, a minor conditional use permit.
Okay,
In West Gateway, a conditional use permit.
They should be consistent, I think. I think you shouldn't
Yeah, we should, yeah,
discriminate one zone from
Yeah,
another.
we need
It's
to
the
be
two
consistent.
gateways. Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Both gateways,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
And then in the light industrial, a minor conditional use permit. And in the industrial business park, a conditional use permit.
Yeah, I guess. Is that okay? For vehicle repair, make it what is it, a minor CUP? Say it again, hun?
Yes, so minor conditional use permit in the light industrial, so
Okay.
just staff level, we take a look at the operations.
Okay.
And then in industrial business park, a conditional use permit is what's currently required.
Does it need to be a conditional use permit? Can it just be the same as, can it be a minor?
It could be, we could drop it to a minor,
What do you
and
guys think in the,
I mean, it's industrial, right?
yeah,
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 it's kind of moving towards what you were talking
Yeah.
about, so,
right.
yep.
So what do you think, minor CUP? That's the staff level? For industrial,
so in the two industrial zones, staff level CUP, in the two gateways, planning commission level CUP.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Let's see, what's my next note? We're gonna look into large versus small assembly and religious assembly and all our other uses that might fall into assembly and get back to you on how we regulate those. And I don't have any notes on the last page, so I think those are all the notes. Is there anything that I missed or any other questions?
I think you're good.
Nope, I think that was a good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
awesome.
Well, thank you all. That is all we have for this item.
Okay. Move on to planning department reports. Anything to report?
I do just have a couple of things to report on upcoming outreach events. So the city is going to be at the farmers market next Wednesday, the 17th of May. We'll have a booth there along with, I believe, recreation, and we'll be talking about the general plan update, getting some feedback. And then the following day, on Thursday, the 18th, we'll be having a virtual workshop that you can join via Zoom. And that'll be at 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll be online talking about the general plan and taking public comment on the draft general plan. So 17th in person at the farmers market, 18th online at a virtual workshop via Zoom. And you can get any of the information or register for the event at hollister2040.org. And you can also review the draft general plan there. It is out for release. That's another note. And then, as Director Hopper alluded to a little bit ago, we are having a mobile food outreach on the Monday, the 22nd of May. Is that also at 6 p.m.?
That's, yeah, from 6 to 7 p.m.
What is that again?
So that is an outreach meeting, informational session, pretty informal. People can ask questions.
When is it?
May 22nd, Monday, May 22nd,
5/22.
6 to 7 p.m. here in the council chamber.
6 to 6?
6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. There'll be a presentation that's similar to what you all received on mobile food.
Yeah.
And then, and this is in preparation of the ordinance going to council on June 5th.
Good, because I have another question. I probably can't ask it right now, but I can ask it then, right? Because I never had my question answered about why we weren't going to allow food trucks in the West Gateway. We got sidetracked and I didn't get an answer, so maybe we'll talk.
They are permitted in
They
West
are
Gr-
permitted?
They're
What was
permitted
I
throughout
had a
the city.
question and I just, maybe I'll have to give it some thought. It seemed
Give it
like
some thought and
there wasn't, it
attend
seemed like,
the session.
I'll read it again. I thought it was a no-go in the West Gateway for the food trucks.
No, they are, so the food trucks are permitted.
look at it again.
In some respect, in the entire city.
Okay, I'll
It's
look at
just,
it.
yeah, there's just,
Seemed like I had a concern.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we did make some
All right.
changes. I don't know how much we could talk about it, but we did make some changes to clarify based on the discussion we had with the planning
Correct.
commissioner.
Yeah.
I'll look at it again.
And then the only other outreach announcement I have is to look out for information upcoming towards the end of the month. We're hoping to have some housing element discussion an outreach, a first pass to get some information from the public and feedback from the public on the housing element. So dates are being finalized. So, but
Another
look
very
out for that
important
information.
document.
The other direction that we received from City Council on the inclusionary housing
Yes.
ordinance is to do some additional community outreach.
Yeah, I read it. I read
And
it.
so
I saw
we
the
will,
meeting.
be looking at some dates for that and sort of what that looks like. And so stay tuned. And after that outreach meeting, then we'll continue on the path back to council or potentially back to planning commission. We never know. So, but based on that outreach, we'll get some ideas from the public.
Can I ask how do you advertise an outreach? Like how would an average person in the public learn about it?
The
Quarter page ad.
Right, the city has, so whatever, we do encourage the public to sign up for everything we possibly have on the website to have notifications of planning commission, agendas, city council. We also do have, social media that all of these outreach efforts get posted on. So anyone who's on Facebook or I believe Instagram, and I can't remember the other ones, but those blasts go out. Depending upon the outreach meeting, our PIO, Public Information Officer, who's currently our interim city manager, will do press releases wherever we can try, and also trying to just contact target audiences as well. So for mobile food vending, because they are mobile, I went to the farmer's market and handed out flyers to the vendors. And we're also then walking downtown and making sure we go to the brick and mortar restaurants to hand deliver the flyers as well. So we try to get people in as many ways as possible. I also we go through the Downtown Business Association and the Chamber especially to make sure that they can give them information to be able to put a blast out to their
And you put an ad
members.
in the freelance? Look, that freelance is the only thing we have that goes to a lot of seniors because they don't do
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
like me. I don't. So that freelance is a hard print.
All notices, correct.
Before all the computer stuff, we relied heavily on the freelance
Right.
and the Pinnacle. And we would buy a quarter page ad so that they did see it because nobody looks at the public notices. Has to be bigger and in the front somewhere. It's important. Not everybody does computers. Yeah. And I want
understand.
senior input because they're important. We're important. I am now a senior. I'll be looking for the discussion in the general plan for the senior stuff. Can't think of what I'm trying to say right now, but there's a certain thing we're supposed to be doing. Okay.
Thank you. Any other report from planning?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so.
Thank you. Move on to planning commission reports. Does anyone have anything to report?
I don't have a report, I have a request. Please, as your city plan commissioner, I need a large existing general plan map and a large proposed draft general plan map. I cannot see those little ones. I need to put them on my wall at home so that I can compare like this. So when I say large, I don't mean 11 by 17. I want that 16 by 20, whatever it is, current and proposed. Can't read that little one. How am I supposed to tell what block is what? So if I could make a special request for that, I don't know if you guys are interested, but I like to see them hanging side by side as I try to see what's changing.
So we'll do our best. We'll have to figure out how to get them printed. Right now, our plotter is over in a building that we can't get into.
Okay.
So we'd like to go in probably more the better. So we'll talk about how many we
You
need
can
to have
just go on
plotted.
down to the printing shop and
So
I
24
know
by
we have a budget for that.
24 by 36 is the
Yes.
size that you're looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
I have to see. I want to make marks on it. We're gonna meet. I already see stuff. Okay, That's all my request was.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports from the commission? Okay, so that concludes all the agenda, so we will adjourn the meeting at 8:15.
But it fell on my foot.
Recording stop.